Imagine a world where no child feels abandoned and no woman feels forgotten. A world where orphans and widows are cherished, supported, and protected. This vision isn't just a dream, it's a reality that Islam calls us to create. Did you know that Islam places immense importance on the care and rights of orphans and widows, promising immense rewards for those who uphold their dignity and well-being? Today, in a world that often overlooks the vulnerable, it's crucial to revisit these timeless teachings and understand how they remain as relevant as ever. Whether you've wondered about your role in making a difference or want to deepen your understanding of Islamic values, this video will inspire you and provide guidance. By the end of this video, you'll not only learn what the Quran and Hadith say about the rights of orphans and widows, but also discover practical ways to apply these lessons in our daily lives. Together, we'll uncover the beauty of Islam's emphasis on compassion and justice, ensuring no one is left behind. Stay with us to explore this profound topic, filled with wisdom, hope, and actionable insights. Let's begin. Islamic teachings on orphans. Islam places great emphasis on the care, protection, and rights of orphans. This guidance is deeply rooted in the Quran and Sunnah, highlighting the spiritual and social responsibility of the community toward these vulnerable members of society. Here's a detailed exploration of what Islam teaches about orphans. 1. Quranic guidance on orphans. The Quran repeatedly emphasizes the importance of caring for orphans, warning against their neglect and exploitation. Several verses serve as reminders of the value and responsibility attached to supporting orphans. Surah Ad-Duha 93:6-9. Did he not find you an orphan and give you refuge? So do not oppress the orphan. This verse highlights the Prophet Muhammad's PBUH own experience as an orphan and commands believers to ensure orphans are treated with kindness and respect. Surah Al-Baqarah 2:220, and they ask you about orphans. Say, improving their condition is best. Here, Allah encourages Muslims to look after orphans' welfare, prioritizing their well-being over personal gain. Surah An-Nisa 4:10, indeed, those who devour the property of orphans unjustly are only consuming into their bellies fire. This stern warning underscores the gravity of misusing an orphan's wealth or inheritance, a sin punishable by severe consequences. 2. Hadiths on the virtues of caring for orphans. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, frequently stressed the rewards of supporting orphans, presenting it as an act that strengthens faith and earns immense blessings. Companionship in paradise. The Prophet, PBUH, said, I and the one who looks after an orphan will be in paradise like this, and he raised his forefinger and middle finger close together, Sahih Bukhari. This hadith showcases the high status of those who care for orphans, promising them closeness to the Prophet in the hereafter. Reward equivalent to striving in Allah's path. Another hadith likens the person who supports an orphan to a mujahid, one who struggles for Allah's cause, emphasizing the significance of this noble act. Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. 3. Financial rights of orphans. Islam outlines specific guidelines to ensure orphans' wealth and property are safeguarded. Guardianship of property. Guardians are entrusted with the responsibility of managing orphans' assets until they reach maturity. The Quran advises against mixing one's wealth with that of the orphan, unless done with the intention of betterment. Surah Al-Baqarah 2:220. Fair inheritance laws. Islamic inheritance laws ensure orphans receive their rightful share, preventing exploitation or unfair treatment. 4. Social and emotional care. Beyond financial support, Islam emphasizes the emotional and social well-being of orphans. Kindness and compassion. The Quran and Hadith stress treating orphans with gentleness. The Prophet, PBUH, exemplified this by showing deep love and care for children, setting a model for the Muslim community. Integration into society. Islam discourages isolating orphans or making them feel different. Instead, it advocates for their inclusion, ensuring they grow up as valued members of the community. 5. The Prophet Muhammad's PBUH example. As an orphan himself, the Prophet Muhammad PBUH serves as a living example of the resilience and potential that orphans possess when supported. Raised without his parents, the Prophet PBUH grew into a leader and the mercy to mankind, thanks to the care of his grandfather and uncle. He consistently championed the rights of orphans, advocating for their dignity and well-being. 6. Practical applications for modern times. In today's world, these teachings remain deeply relevant. Muslims are encouraged to sponsor orphans, financially support orphan children through charities and organizations. Volunteer and mentor, offer time and guidance to help orphans gain education and life skills. Advocate for orphan rights, speak out against injustices faced by orphans, and work toward creating supportive policies and systems. Islamic teachings on orphans reflect the essence of mercy, compassion, and justice that lies at the heart of the faith. By upholding these principles, Muslims not only fulfill their spiritual obligations, but also contribute to building a more equitable and caring society. Islamic teachings on widows. In Islam, widows are among the most vulnerable members of society, and their care, rights, and dignity are emphasized repeatedly in the Quran and Hadith. The religion provides clear guidance on how to ensure their well-being, protect their rights, and empower them to lead fulfilling lives. 1. Quranic guidance on widows. The Quran lays the foundation for treating widows with respect, kindness, and fairness. Several verses emphasize their rights and responsibilities in both personal and societal contexts. Kindness and justice, live with them in kindness. For if you dislike them, perhaps you dislike a thing and Allah makes therein much good. Surah An-Nisa 4:19. This verse encourages Muslims to treat women, including widows, with kindness and understanding, recognizing the challenges they face. Support during the waiting period, and those who are taken in death among you and leave wives behind, they the widows shall wait 4 months and 10 days. Surah Al-Baqarah 2:234. The waiting period, or iddah, is prescribed for widows, not as a restriction, but as a protection, ensuring that they are not hastily mistreated or exploited during their period of grief and vulnerability. Inheritance rights, and for them, widows is 1/4 of what you leave if you have no child. But if you have a child, then for them is 1/8. Surah An-Nisa 4:12. Islam safeguards the financial rights of widows by granting them a share in the inheritance of their deceased husband's wealth, ensuring their economic stability. 2. Hadiths on supporting widows. The Prophet Muhammad PBUH emphasized the virtue and rewards of caring for widows and treating them with dignity, equivalents to striving in Allah's path. The Prophet PBUH said, "The one who looks after a widow or a poor person is like a mujahid, one who fights in Allah's cause, or like one who prays all night and fasts all day." Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. This hadith underscores the spiritual rewards for those who dedicate themselves to Sah. Prohibition of harm. The Prophet PBUH warned against mistreating vulnerable members of society, including widows, highlighting that harming them is a grave sin. 3. Financial rights of widows. Islam ensures widows are financially secure, recognizing their potential hardships after losing their husbands. Dowry. Widows retain full ownership of their dowry, which cannot be taken away by the husband's family or others. Nafaka, maintenance. During the iddah period, a widow is entitled to financial support from her deceased husband's estate to cover her basic needs. Inheritance share. As highlighted earlier, widows are granted a rightful share of their husband's estate, ensuring economic independence and security. 4. Social and emotional care for widows. Widows are not only entitled to financial support, but also deserve social inclusion and emotional care. Integration into society. The Prophet PBUH encouraged Muslims to actively involve widows in the community, ensuring they do not feel isolated or neglected. Marriage opportunities. Islam strongly encourages the remarriage of widows if they desire it. The Prophet PBUH himself married widows, setting an example for the Muslim community to follow. This approach breaks societal stigmas and ensures widows can rebuild their lives. Compassion and understanding. Widows should be treated with sensitivity, acknowledging their loss and providing emotional support during their period of grief. 5. The Prophet Muhammad's PBUH example. The life of the Prophet Muhammad PBUH offers practical examples of how widows should be treated. Marriage to widows. The majority of the Prophet's PBUH wives were widows, demonstrating his commitment to supporting them emotionally and socially. For instance, his marriage to Salama Ra was a source of great comfort and stability for her after her husband's death. Support for widows in society. The Prophet PBUH personally cared for widows, ensuring their needs were met and advocating for their rights within the community. 6. Practical applications in modern times. The principles of Islam regarding widows are timeless and can be implemented in today's context in several ways. Community support. Establish support networks to assist widows with financial aid, education, and employment opportunities. Challenging stigma. Address cultural taboos or stigmas surrounding widows and encourage their active participation in society. Encouraging remarriage. Promote the remarriage of widows, ensuring they have the opportunity for companionship and a stable family life if desired. Empowering widows. Provide platforms for widows to gain skills, education, and independence, helping them rebuild their lives with dignity. Key rights of orphans and widows in Islam. Islam places a strong emphasis on ensuring the rights of orphans and widows, safeguarding their dignity, well-being, and integration into society. These rights are explicitly detailed in the Quran and Sunnah, reflecting Islam's comprehensive approach to protecting society's most vulnerable members. Below are the key rights granted to orphans and widows. Rights of orphans. 1. Right to care and guardianship, emotional and physical care. Orphans have the right to be cared for and provided with a safe and loving environment. Guardians are responsible for ensuring their well-being, including access to basic needs like food, shelter, and clothing. Community responsibility. If immediate family members cannot provide care, the community is encouraged to step in, as the welfare of orphans is a shared societal obligation. 2. Right to property and wealth protection. Safeguarding their assets. Orphans' property and wealth must be preserved until they reach maturity. Guardians are prohibited from misusing or consuming an orphan's assets. Surah An-Nisa 4:10. Transparency and accountability. Guardians must manage an orphan's wealth responsibly and keep clear records of its use. Once the orphan reaches maturity, their assets should be handed over without any misappropriation. 3. Right to financial support. Community aid. Orphans have the right to financial support from the community, whether through individual sponsorship, charity, or organized initiatives like Waqf, Islamic endowments. Zakat and Sadaqah. Orphans are eligible recipients of Zakat and Sadaqah, as these forms of charity are explicitly intended to uplift the vulnerable. 4. Right to emotional support and compassion. Protection from harm. Orphans have the right to be treated with kindness and gentleness. Islam strongly condemns any form of oppression, neglect, or harsh treatment toward orphans. Surah Al-Man 107:2. Integration and belonging. Orphans must not feel isolated or different. Islam encourages their inclusion in families and communities to foster a sense of belonging and self-worth. Rights of widows. 1. Right to financial support, maintenance during Iddah, widows are entitled to financial support from their deceased husband's estate during the 4 months and 10 days of their waiting period. Ida, Surah Al-Baqarah 2, 234. Inheritance share. Islam ensures widows receive a rightful share of their husband's inheritance. Surah An-Nisa 4:12. This provides financial security and independence. Community and family support. If the widow lacks sufficient means, her extended family and the Muslim community are obligated to support her financially and emotionally. 2. Right to remarriage, freedom to remarry. Widows have the right to remarry if they choose, without societal stigma or undue pressure. Islam encourages remarriage as a means of companionship, protection, and stability. Surah Al-Baqarah 2, 232. Consent in marriage. A widow has the right to give or withhold consent in remarriage. Her opinion and preferences must be respected. 3. Right to dignity and respect, protection from exploitation. Widows have the right to live with dignity, free from any form of exploitation or mistreatment. Islam strongly discourages practices that marginalize or demean widows. Inclusion in society. Widows should not be ostracized or treated as outcasts. Instead, they must be integrated into the community and provided with opportunities to lead fulfilling lives. 4. Right to empowerment, access to education and work. Widows have the right to education and employment, empowering them to support themselves and their families if needed. Opportunity for leadership. Historically, widows like Khadija Ra and Salama Ra played prominent roles in Islamic society, demonstrating that widows have the right to contribute actively and lead within their communities. Shared rights of orphans and widows. 1. Protection from oppression and harm. Both orphans and widows are protected under Islamic law from any form of oppression, neglect, or exploitation. Surah An-Nisa 4:10 sternly warns against consuming the wealth of orphans, and similar protections apply to widows. 2. Access to justice. Islam ensures that both orphans and widows have the right to seek justice if their rights are violated. Guardians, family members, and the community are collectively responsible for upholding their rights and advocating for them when necessary. 3. Right to community care. Islam encourages the entire Muslim community to act as a safety net for orphans and widows. Acts of charity, support, and advocacy are considered virtuous and rewarded in this world and the hereafter. Examples in Islamic history: leaders like Caliph Umar Ra personally ensured the well-being of widows and orphans, setting a precedent for community responsibility. Real-life examples and historical lessons on the rights of orphans and widows in Islam. Islamic history and contemporary examples highlight the practical application of teachings regarding orphans and widows. These stories serve as lessons and reminders of the timeless values of compassion, justice, and responsibility. Below are detailed real-life examples and historical lessons that underscore the significance of caring for orphans and widows in Islam. Real-life examples and historical lessons. Orphans. 1. The Prophet Muhammad's early life as an orphan. The Prophet Muhammad lost his father before he was born and his mother at a young age, leaving him an orphan. Despite these hardships, he was lovingly cared for by his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, and later by his uncle, Abu Talib. This highlights the importance of stepping in as guardians and mentors for orphans. The love and support provided to the Prophet, allowed him to grow into a leader and role model for humanity. 2. Caliph Umar Ra and the orphans. Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab Ra was known for his dedication to ensuring the well-being of orphans. On one occasion, he personally delivered food to a family of orphans late at night and cooked for them, ensuring they were fed. Leadership entails responsibility toward the vulnerable. This story illustrates the moral and societal obligation of individuals, especially leaders, to actively care for orphans. 3. Orphan sponsorship in modern times. Across the Muslim world, individuals and organizations sponsor orphans, providing them with education, healthcare, and emotional support. Organizations like Islamic Relief and Penny Appeal exemplify modern initiatives inspired by Islamic teachings. The principles of supporting orphans remain relevant, encouraging Muslims to channel their resources and time to uplift vulnerable children. Real-life examples and historical lessons. Widows. 1. The Prophet Muhammad's PBUH marriages to widows. Many of the Prophet's PBUH wives were widows, including Khadija Ra and Salama Ra. These marriages were acts of compassion and support, breaking societal stigmas and offering these women stability and companionship. The Prophet's PBUH actions teach that widows should not face isolation or stigma. Supporting widows through marriage or community efforts is an essential part of Islamic practice. 2. Salama Ra, a widow's resilience. Salama Ra became a widow after her husband, Abu Salama Ra, passed away. Despite her grief, she showed incredible strength and accepted the Prophet's PBUH proposal of marriage. She later became a significant figure in Islamic history, narrating many hadiths and contributing to the spread of knowledge. Widows are valuable members of society with much to contribute. Their experiences should be respected, and they should be empowered to lead meaningful lives. 3. Caliph Umar's Ra care for widows. Caliph Umar Ra personally checked on widows in his community, ensuring they had sufficient food and provisions. He would often carry supplies to their homes and avoid publicizing his acts of charity. Leaders and individuals alike should prioritize the welfare of widows, offering direct support and maintaining their dignity. Lessons from Islamic history. Combined care for orphans and widows. 1. The institution of Waqf. During the Islamic Golden Age, Waqf endowments were established to provide long-term care for orphans and widows. These charitable trusts funded schools, shelters, and social programs to ensure their well-being. Systematic and sustainable solutions, inspired by Islamic teachings, are necessary to address the needs of orphans and widows on a larger scale. 2. The Battle of Uhud. Widows and orphans suffering. After the Battle of Uhud, many Muslim men were martyred, leaving behind widows and orphans. The Prophet, PBUH, and his companions made significant efforts to provide for these families, ensuring their financial and emotional needs were met. Times of crisis demand heightened attention to the rights of widows and orphans. Their care is a collective responsibility, reflecting the strength of a united Muslim community. Modern-day examples applying lessons today. 1. Charitable organizations supporting orphans and widows. Charitable organizations like Helping Hand for Relief and Development and Muslim Hands provide essential services to orphans and widows, including housing, education, and skill development. By supporting such organizations, individuals can fulfill their Islamic duty of caring for the vulnerable. 2. Widow empowerment programs. In countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan, programs have been initiated to provide widows with vocational training and financial support, enabling them to become self-reliant. Empowering widows aligns with Islamic principles, ensuring their dignity and ability to contribute to society.